The moment I stepped out of the car, a chill crept up my spine. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and overgrown foliage, and I could hear the distant rustle of leaves as if the trees themselves were whispering secrets. I glanced at the old iron gate, its once vibrant paint now peeling and rusted, and felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. This was the house I grew up in, the place where I had spent my childhood summers, but it felt foreign now. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Jake asked, pulling up beside me on his bike. He looked as enthusiastic as ever, his eyes sparkling with memories of our shared past. But I could see the concern etched on his face, and it made my heart flutter with uncertainty. "I have to, Jake," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. This is where it all began. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I pushed the gate open, the rusty hinges creaking in protest, and stepped onto the gravel path leading to the front door. As I walked, the memories flooded back. Playing tag in the yard, climbing the old oak tree, and the laughter of friends echoing through the halls. But now, the house was shrouded in shadows, covered in graffiti and creeping vines. It felt like a tomb, holding onto the remnants of a life that had long since faded away. "Emily," Jake called out, breaking my trance. "Wait up." He caught up with me, his bike abandoned at the foot of the path. "Look at this place. It's a total wreck." I nodded, trying to mask my apprehension with a smile. "Yeah, but it's still home." Just then, a distant laugh echoed through the air, a sound so familiar yet so foreign. I froze, my heart racing. It was a laugh I hadn't heard in years, one that had once filled these walls with warmth. But now, it felt like a taunt, a reminder of what had been lost. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Hear what?" Jake looked at me quizzically, his brow furrowing in confusion. "The laugh. It sounded like children playing." I stammered, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Jake shrugged, attempting to lighten the mood. "Probably just the wind or something. Let's check it out." His enthusiasm was infectious, and I forced a grin as we moved closer to the entrance. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light filtering through the grimy windows, and I could barely make out the outlines of familiar furniture covered in white sheets. I stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight, and felt an overwhelming sense of nostalgia mixed with dread. "Wow, it's like time has stopped," Jake said, peering into the living room. "Do you remember that old sofa? We used to build forts out of the cushions." I laughed softly, the sound echoing in the stillness. "Yeah, and we thought we could rule the world from our fort." As we moved deeper into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the walls held onto the memories, the laughter and the joy, but also something darker, something that lingered in the shadows. I paused in front of a door at the end of the hallway, its paint chipped and faded. "Should we go in?" Jake asked, his voice low. I nodded hesitantly, pushing the door open to reveal the old playroom. The sight took my breath away. Dusty toys scattered across the floor, faded drawings taped to the walls, and a small table where we used to have tea parties. But something was off. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy I couldn't quite place. "Emily," Jake said softly, stepping inside. "This place, it feels strange." I walked over to the window, pulling back the tattered curtain to let in more light. As I did, a fleeting shadow darted past the corner of my eye. I whipped around, my heart pounding. "Did you see that?" Jake glanced at me, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "See what?" "Something moved, like a child," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I swear I saw." "Maybe it was just a trick of the light," Jake suggested, though I could tell he was starting to feel uneasy too. I shook my head, trying to shake off the creeping sense of dread. "No, it felt real. I don't know." We spent the next few hours exploring the house, but the laughter continued to echo in my mind, a constant reminder of the past. As night began to fall, the shadows grew longer, and the atmosphere shifted from nostalgic to eerie. I felt a chill in the air, and the walls seemed to close in around us. "Let's take a break," Jake suggested, plopping down on the old sofa. I could use a moment to breathe. I joined him, feeling the weight of the day settling on my shoulders. "Yeah, I think I need to process everything. It's just this place." "I get it," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It's heavy, but we're in this together, okay? We'll figure it out." I smiled weakly, grateful for his support. "Thanks, Jake. I wish I could understand why I'm feeling this way." The house creaked around us, and I could almost hear the whispers of the past calling out to me. The laughter was louder now, echoing through the halls like a haunting melody. "Do you ever feel like it's trying to tell us something?" I asked, glancing around. "Yeah, but what? Ghosts? Secrets? It's all a bit much," he admitted, his brow furrowed in thought. "But maybe it's not about what it wants us to know. Maybe it's about what we've forgotten." His words lingered in the air, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What if we're meant to remember? What if we're supposed to uncover something? Jake looked at me, his expression serious. "Then we need to be careful. Whatever happened here, it's not just memories. It feels darker." Just as he spoke, a loud thud echoed from upstairs, causing both of us to jump. I exchanged a frightened glance with Jake. "What was that?" "I don't know," he replied, his voice strained. "But we should check it out." I nodded, though my heart raced with fear. We climbed the creaky staircase, the shadows growing thicker with each step. The air felt charged, as if the house was alive, and I could sense it breathing around us. As we reached the landing, I hesitated, glancing back at Jake. "Do you think we should really do this?" "Absolutely," he said, his tone firm but reassuring. "We came here to find answers, right?" With a deep breath, I pushed open the door to the first room. It was dark, the moonlight barely illuminating the space. As I stepped inside, I felt an overwhelming sense of unease, like something was lurking just beyond my field of vision. "Emily," Jake called out, his voice echoing in the silence. "Come check this out." I turned to see him standing by a dusty old trunk, the wood warped and faded. "What did you find?" "Looks like an old toy box," he said, pulling it open. Inside, I saw a jumble of forgotten toys, dolls with missing limbs, a tarnished race car, and a faded teddy bear. But there was something else. A small, leather-bound book nestled in the corner. "Is that?" I approached, my heart racing as I recognized the familiar design. "That looks like one of my old journals." Jake carefully lifted it out, brushing off the dust. "Open it. Maybe there's something in there that can help us." I took the book from him, my hands trembling as I flipped through the yellowed pages. Memories rushed back, scribbled notes about my childhood, drawings of friends, and stories of adventures. But as I turned to the last few pages, my breath hitched. "Jake, look at this," I said, pointing to a section filled with strange symbols and drawings. "What do you think it means?" "I have no idea," he replied, leaning closer. "But it looks like some sort of ritual." A sudden wave of nausea washed over me as I read the words aloud. "To summon the spirits of the lost, one must call upon the laughter of children." The laughter, it echoed in my mind, louder than ever, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "We need to get out of here," I said, panic rising in my chest. But before we could leave, the temperature in the room dropped dramatically, and I could see my breath fogging in the air. The shadows in the corners twisted and turned, taking on shapes that felt all too familiar. "Emily, what's happening?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. I could barely respond. The laughter crescendoed, filling the room like a haunting chorus. It was no longer distant. It was right here, surrounding us. Then, in the midst of the chaos, I caught a glimpse of a small figure darting across the room, the outline of a child. As I stood in front of my childhood home, a wave of emotions washed over me. The once vibrant paint had faded into peeling layers of neglect, and the yard, once a sunlit playground, was now a tangled mess of weeds and wildflowers. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, and as I approached the rusty gate, a shiver ran down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, feeling an inexplicable chill that seemed to seep into my bones. Then, just as I reached out to push the gate open, I heard it, a distant, echoing laugh, like the sound of children playing. It was both haunting and familiar, and I was suddenly transported back to a time when laughter filled this house, before everything changed. "Emily, is that you?" A voice called out, breaking my trance. I turned to see Jake riding up on his bike, his face lit up with excitement. It felt like a lifetime since I had seen him, and the sight of his boyish grin brought a fleeting sense of comfort. "I can't believe you're back. We should totally explore the old neighborhood." "Hey, Jake," I replied, forcing a smile. "Yeah, it's good to be back." But even as I said it, the weight of the past pressed down on me. Jake must have sensed my hesitation. His expression shifted from excitement to concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, dismounting his bike and walking closer. "You look a little pale. It's just, this place feels different. I don't know. I thought I'd feel nostalgic, but it's more unsettling," I admitted, glancing back at the house. The laughter was gone now, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. "Let's check it out together," Jake suggested, his eyes sparkling with determination. "I mean, who knows what we might find? It's been years. Maybe we can uncover some old memories, or even some new ones." I nodded, appreciating his enthusiasm. "Okay, but let's be careful. I've heard some strange things about this place." As we ventured inside, the air grew thick with dust, and the smell of stale air enveloped us. The interior was a ghost of its former self. The living room, once bustling with joy, was now filled with shadows. I could see remnants of my childhood. A broken toy on the floor, a faded family photo on the wall. It was both comforting and disconcerting. "Do you remember those summer afternoons when we'd pretend we were explorers?" Jake asked, his voice echoing in the silence. "We'd make up stories about hidden treasures and secret passages." "Yeah," I chuckled softly, but the laughter quickly faded. "But now it feels like we might uncover something we weren't meant to find." Jake's expression turned serious. "Let's find out what really happened here. Maybe there's a way to put the past to rest." That night, I lay awake in the old room I once shared with my sister. The walls were now bare, and the bed creaked ominously under my weight. I closed my eyes, hoping for sleep, but instead, I was pulled into a world of restless dreams. I found myself in the backyard, watching a group of children playing. They seemed so alive, their laughter ringing through the air like music. But just as I reached out to join them, they turned to me with expressions that sent chills down my spine. Eyes wide with fear, mouths open in silent screams. I jolted awake, heart racing. The laughter was back, but this time it felt closer, as if the children were right outside my window. I could hear the faint echoes of their joy, now twisted into something sinister. "Emily?" Jake's voice came from the other room, groggy and concerned. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, though my voice trembled. I could hear him getting up, the soft patter of his feet against the floorboards. "Did you hear that? The laughter?" he asked, stepping into my room. He looked as shaken as I felt. "It's like they want us to find them." "I know," I whispered, a lump forming in my throat. "It's unsettling. I thought it was just a dream, but it felt so real." Jake ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched across his face. "We need to figure this out. We can't just ignore it. There has to be a reason why we're hearing these sounds." "I agree," I said, feeling a sense of urgency wash over me. But where do we even start? The next morning, we made our way to the local library, eager to uncover the history of the house. As we scoured through old newspapers and records, my heart sank with each article we read. The stories were grim, accounts of children who had disappeared over the years, all linked to my home. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a headline that read, "Local children vanish without a trace." The date was decades old, but the details were chillingly familiar. It's like they all had some connection to this place. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What if those children are the ones we heard laughing? What if they're trying to tell us something? As we delved deeper, we stumbled upon a dusty old diary tucked away in a forgotten corner of the library. The cover was worn, but the name Sarah was still legible. My heart raced as I opened it, eager to learn more. The pages were filled with innocent drawings of children playing in the very same yard I had once roamed. "This is incredible," I murmured, tracing the sketches with my finger. Sarah seemed so happy. "But look here." She mentions a figure, a man who would watch them play. Jake leaned in closer, his brow furrowed. "That's unsettling. It sounds like someone was always lurking, even back then. Maybe he's the reason the children disappeared," I suggested. "If he was part of something sinister, it could explain everything." Jake flipped to another page, and I felt a shiver run down my spine as he read aloud. "Sometimes I hear whispers in the night, calling my name. I don't know who it is, but it feels like they want me to join them." Tears pricked at my eyes. This poor girl. She must have been terrified. As we continued to read, I felt an inexplicable connection to Sarah. Her experiences mirrored my own, and it was as if her spirit was reaching out to me. "Jake, I think we have to go back to the house," I said, determination flooding my voice. "There's something here we need to uncover." He nodded in agreement. "Let's see if we can find out what happened to Sarah and the others. Maybe the answers we're looking for are waiting for us there." With heavy hearts but steadfast resolve, we returned to the house. As I stepped through the door, I felt a strange energy in the air, as if the very walls were alive with secrets. The laughter echoed again, faint yet persistent, guiding us deeper into the shadows of the past. As we explored the dimly lit rooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind felt like a reminder of the children who once played here. "This place holds so many stories," I murmured, glancing around the living room where I had spent countless afternoons. "Let's check the attic," Jake suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe there's something up there that could help us." Climbing the creaky stairs, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. The attic was dark and cluttered, filled with forgotten relics of the past. As we rummaged through boxes, I stumbled upon an old trunk covered in dust. "Help me with this," I called, and together we pried it open. Inside, we found an assortment of toys, clothes, and a small stack of letters tied with a fraying ribbon. "Look, these letters might be important," Jake said, pulling them out. As he began to read, my heart raced. The letters were from Sarah, written to her friends, talking about her fears and dreams. She mentioned something about a game they used to play, where they would pretend to summon spirits. "That's it," I exclaimed, a sudden realization hitting me. The laughter, the whispers. It must be connected to that game. What if they never stopped playing? Jake's eyes widened. "You might be onto something. If they're trapped here, maybe we can help them find peace." As we pieced together Sarah's story, I felt a growing sense of urgency. The laughter echoed again, this time louder, as if urging us to act. "We need to find a way to connect with them," I said, my heart pounding. "Maybe we can perform a ritual like they did." Jake nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Let's do it. For Sarah, for all the children. We owe it to them." With our plan in place, we gathered supplies and prepared ourselves for whatever awaited us in the depths of the past. The laughter faded into silence, but I could still feel their presence, guiding us toward the truth. The echoes of the past were growing stronger, and I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. As I stood before the rusted gate of my childhood home, a wave of nostalgia washed over me, mixed with an unsettling feeling that I couldn't quite shake. The house, once vibrant and full of life, was now a shadow of its former self, cloaked in layers of graffiti and wild overgrowth. I pushed the gate open, its creaking hinges echoing through the stillness, and an inexplicable chill ran down my spine. It felt as if the air had thickened around me, and just as I took my first step onto the cracked walkway, I heard it, a distant, echoing laughter that sent a shiver through me. I hesitated, my heart racing, the laughter almost playful yet eerily unsettling. "Emily, is that you?" A familiar voice called out, snapping me from my reverie. I turned to see Jake, my childhood friend, pedaling toward me on his bike, his face lighting up with excitement. The sight of him brought a small smile to my lips, but I could tell he sensed my unease. "Hey, Jake," I replied, trying to sound casual as I brushed a stray lock of hair behind my ear. "I'm back for a bit. Looks like the place hasn't changed much, huh?" he said, glancing at the house with a mix of nostalgia and concern. "Want to check it out together? I mean, it could be fun, right?" "Fun," I echoed, my voice wavering. "It feels more like a horror movie waiting to happen." Jake chuckled, an attempt to lighten the mood. "Come on, it'll be just like old times. Besides, I'm here. I'll protect you from all the ghosts lurking in the corners." I rolled my eyes, but the smile returned to my face. "All right, but if I hear any more of that laughter, we're running for the hills." As we stepped inside, the house felt cold, the air thick with dust and memories. The wooden floors creaked beneath our feet as we walked through the dimly lit hallway. I glanced at the walls, where faded photographs hung, capturing moments of a life I once knew. Everything felt foreign yet strangely familiar. "Do you remember that summer we built a fort in the living room?" Jake asked, his eyes sparkling with memory. "We thought we were so clever hiding from the monsters." "Yeah, and then we ended up getting caught by your mom." I laughed, the sound echoing in the empty space. But as the laughter faded, that unsettling feeling crept back. That night, I settled into my old bedroom, the familiar creak of the bed beneath me bringing a sense of comfort. But sleep did not come easily. The moment I drifted off, I was thrust into a world of dreams filled with laughter, children's laughter, echoing in the backyard, where the swing swayed without a breeze and the sun shone brightly. I could see them, a group of happy children, playing tag as they darted around the trees. But just as I began to join them, the scene shifted. The laughter turned into cries, and I was suddenly alone in the darkness, surrounded by whispers that called my name. I jolted awake, heart pounding, as the familiar laughter returned, closer this time, echoing through the walls of the house. I sat up, straining to listen, but all I could hear was the sound of my own breath, quick and panicked. Was I dreaming again? I shook my head, trying to dispel the remnants of the nightmare, but the laughter lingered. The next morning, I met Jake at the local library, determined to uncover the truth about the house and its past. We buried ourselves in old newspapers and dusty records, seeking answers to the questions that had been gnawing at me since my arrival. "Look at this," Jake said, excitement lacing his voice as he pointed to an article. "It's about the disappearances. Several kids went missing in the area, all connected to this house." My heart sank as I read the words, each sentence more chilling than the last. "They were never found, Jake. It's like they just vanished." He nodded, the gravity of the situation settling in. "We need to dig deeper. There has to be something more." Hours passed as we combed through the archives, but it wasn't until we stumbled upon a small, leather-bound diary that things took a darker turn. The diary belonged to a girl named Sarah. The entries were filled with innocent joys, playing hide and seek, climbing trees, and the arrival of a mysterious figure who watched her play. "Emily, look at this," Jake said, flipping through the pages. "She talks about a man who would always be at the edge of the woods, just watching." "Why didn't anyone do anything?" I whispered, feeling a chill run through me. "Why didn't the parents protect their kids? It's like they were too scared to confront whatever was out there," he replied, his brow furrowed in thought. As I read Sarah's words, an inexplicable connection formed within me. I felt a pull toward her, as if her experiences were echoing in my own life. The laughter I heard wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was a clue, a whisper from the past urging me to remember. "Emily?" Jake's voice broke through my thoughts. "You okay?" I nodded slowly, but I wasn't sure if I was. What if the laughter belongs to Sarah and the others? What if they're trying to tell us something? We left the library feeling uneasy, the weight of the past heavy on our shoulders. As we walked through the town, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The locals seemed to cast furtive glances our way, their expressions a mix of concern and something darker, fear. "Hey, you too," a voice called from behind us. I turned to see Mr. Thompson, an older man with a weathered face and a gaze that seemed to pierce through me. "You'd do well to stay away from that house." "Why?" Jake asked, stepping forward. "We have a right to know what happened there." Mr. Thompson shook his head, his expression grave. "There are things you don't understand. That house is cursed. A cult used to gather there, performing rituals that led to unspeakable events. You don't want to get involved." "Cult?" I echoed, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" "Just listen to me," he warned, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Leave the past buried. It's safer that way." But Jake and I exchanged glances, the determination in his eyes mirroring my own. We couldn't walk away now, not when there were still questions lingering in the air, unanswered and haunting. Later that week, we attempted to speak with my grandmother, hoping she could shed light on the family's history with the house. I felt a mix of dread and anticipation as we approached her small, cozy home, the smell of freshly baked cookies wafting through the air. But as we sat at her kitchen table, the conversation quickly turned tense. "Grandma, we need to talk about the house," I began, my voice steady but my insides churning. "There's so much we don't know." She looked at me, her expression shifting from surprise to worry. "Emily, it's better to leave those memories in the past. You don't understand what you're asking." "Don't I?" I pressed, frustration bubbling up. "People are scared, and I want to help. I need to know what happened. Some things are better left untouched," she said sharply, her voice trembling slightly. "Your family has always known. We've kept those stories buried for a reason." "Why? Why didn't you ever tell me?" I demanded, feeling the weight of betrayal settle heavily on my chest. "What are you hiding?" "Because the truth is too painful, dear," she replied, her voice quiet, filled with sorrow. "The house holds dark secrets that could bring nothing but trouble. It's best to forget." But I couldn't forget. Not when the laughter echoed in my ears, not when Jake's brother was still missing, and not when we were so close to uncovering the truth. As we left my grandmother's house, the tension hung thick in the air. Jake looked over at me, his brow furrowed. "We need to keep pushing forward, Em. If we stop now, we might never know what happened to the kids or to my brother." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "You're right. We can't let fear control us. We owe it to them to find out." And so, fueled by a mix of determination and dread, we set out to unravel the mysteries that surrounded my childhood home, unaware of the darkness that awaited us. As I stood in front of my childhood home, a chill ran down my spine, causing me to hesitate at the rusty gate. The once vibrant facade of the house was now a canvas of graffiti and wild vegetation, as if nature had claimed it back. Memories flooded my mind, but they were overshadowed by an unsettling feeling. Just then, a distant laugh echoed through the air, making my heart race. It was a sound so familiar yet so foreign, a haunting reminder of the innocence that once filled this place. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the gate open, the creak of the hinges sounding like a warning. "Emily, is that you?" I turned to see Jake, my childhood friend, riding up on his bike, a broad smile on his face. "Hey, Jake." I forced a smile, but I could see the concern flicker across his features as he dismounted. "What are you doing here?" "I heard you were back in town and thought I'd check out the old place," he said, looking around. "Wow, it really has changed, huh?" "Yeah, you could say that," I replied, glancing back at the house. "It feels different." Jake studied my face, his smile fading. "You look worried. What's going on?" "It's just..." I hesitated, unsure of how to explain the unease I felt. I heard something, a laugh. It felt like it came from inside. He raised an eyebrow, curiosity peaked. "You want to check it out? Maybe it's just some kids messing around." I bit my lip, the idea both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know, Jake. There's something about this place. Come on, Em. We're not kids anymore. We can handle this, he urged, a spark of excitement in his eyes. Besides, it could be fun, right? With a reluctant nod, I agreed. We made our way to the front porch, the wooden boards creaking under our weight. As we stepped inside, the familiar smell of dust and decay enveloped us. I shivered, remembering the warmth that used to fill these rooms. We began exploring, each room revealing remnants of my childhood. A faded poster of my favorite band, an old toy car half buried under the debris. But with each step, the laughter echoed in my mind, growing louder and more insistent. "Hey, look at this," Jake called out, his voice breaking through my thoughts. I turned to see him holding an old photograph. It's us. From that summer, we had the water balloon fight. I joined him, my heart swelling with nostalgia. "Oh my God, I remember that day. You were such a sore loser." "Hey," I was just caught off guard. He laughed, but his expression turned serious again. "But seriously, Em, this place gives me the creeps. We should probably find out what's going on here." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. That night, as I lay in the old bedroom that used to be mine, sleep eluded me. The shadows danced along the walls, and the laughter returned, now more pronounced and alluring. Felt like a call, an invitation to join in the fun. In my dreams, I found myself in the backyard, surrounded by children, their faces blurred and indistinct. They played games, their laughter ringing in the air like a sweet melody. I felt a strange kinship with them, as if they were beckoning me to join. But just as I reached out to touch one of them, I woke up with a start, gasping for breath. The laughter had transformed, now echoing in the hallway outside my door, much closer. My heart raced as I clutched the sheets, the chill of the night wrapping around me like a shroud. What was happening? Was I losing my mind? The next morning, I met Jake at the local library, desperate for answers. As we pored over dusty old records, I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked beneath the surface of my memories. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing at an article. "Several children have disappeared over the years, all linked to this house." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean? How can that be?" He read aloud. The article mentions a series of mysterious events surrounding the home, including reports of strange noises and sightings of figures in the darkness. The last reported disappearance was just a few years ago. "That's horrifying," I whispered, a knot forming in my throat. "But why hasn't anyone done anything about it?" Jake shrugged. "Maybe they're too scared. I mean, look at this place. The townsfolk have always treated it like a haunted site." We continued our search, and eventually, we stumbled upon the diary of a girl named Sarah. Her handwriting was neat and childish, filled with accounts of playing in the backyard and the arrival of a mysterious figure that watched her from the shadows. As I read her words, a strange connection surged through me. It was as if I could feel her fear and confusion, and the laughter that echoed in my ears took on a new meaning. "Jake, I think this diary is important. It's like Sarah is trying to tell us something." He leaned in closer, studying the pages. "What do you think she means by the figure? Do you think it could be real?" "I don't know, but I feel like whatever happened to her and the other kids is tied to this house," I replied, a sense of urgency creeping into my voice. Just then, we heard a soft whisper, like a breeze carrying a voice from the past. "Help us!" I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Did you hear that?" Jake nodded, his eyes wide. "Yeah, I did. It sounded like it came from over there." He gestured toward a dimly lit corner of the library. We exchanged a glance, both of us acutely aware of the tension in the air. "We have to find out what's going on," I insisted, feeling the weight of the mystery pressing down on us. As we left the library, a sense of foreboding loomed over me. The town felt different, as if I were being watched. I could see a group of older residents whispering among themselves, casting wary glances in our Dorico. "Look at them," I muttered, feeling uneasy. "They know something." Jake followed my gaze. "Maybe we should ask them about the cult they mentioned earlier." I shook my head. I don't know. They seem resistant. What if they don't want to talk? Well, we won't know unless we try, he insisted, determination lining his voice. Besides, if they're hiding something, we need to uncover it. As we approached the group, my heart raced. The air felt thick with tension, and I could sense the apprehension radiating from them. Excuse me, Jake started, his voice steady. We were wondering if you could tell us anything about the history of the house on Oak Street. We heard there was a cult that used to meet there. The men exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to alarm. One of them, an older gentleman with a weathered face, stepped forward. You two shouldn't be poking around there. Leave the past buried. Why? What happened? I pressed, feeling a mix of fear and frustration. Things you don't want to know, he warned, his tone grim. Some things are better left forgotten. That house is cursed, and those who seek its secrets often pay a heavy price. Cursed, Jake echoed, incredulous. What do you mean? The man's eyes darkened. Children went missing. Innocent lives taken by forces beyond our understanding. You don't want to get involved with that. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Was it true? Had I returned to a place filled with such darkness? I looked at Jake, who was equally unsettled yet determined. Thank you for your warning, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But we need to know what really happened. As we walked away, I could feel the weight of their gazes on our Costas, heavy with unspoken truths. The laughter echoed in my mind again, more insistent this time, urging me to uncover what lay hidden in the shadows of my past. I had to know, not just for myself, but for the children who had come before me, lost in the whispers of a forgotten time. As I stood before my childhood home, a wave of nostalgia washed over me, intertwined with an unsettling sense of dread. The house, once vibrant and welcoming, now loomed like a shadow of its former self. The paint was peeling, and the garden had been taken over by wild vines and weeds, as if nature itself was trying to reclaim its territory. I felt an inexplicable chill creep down my spine as I pushed open the rusty gate, the sound of metal scraping against metal echoing in the stillness. Suddenly, a distant laugh pierced the air, light and airy yet laced with an eerie quality that made my heart race. I paused, my hand hovering over the gate. Emily, is everything okay? I whispered to myself, trying to shake off the anxiety that threatened to consume me. But I couldn't deny the shivers that coursed through me, nor could I ignore the remnants of laughter that seemed to linger just beyond my reach. Just then, Jake appeared on his bike, pedaling up the cracked driveway with a bright smile that momentarily pulled me from my thoughts. Hey, Em, you made it! He hopped off his bike, his excitement palpable. I can't believe we're back here. It's just like old times, right? His enthusiasm was infectious, but I couldn't shake the weight that pressed down on my chest. Yeah, I guess, I replied, my voice trailing off as I glanced back at the house, a sense of foreboding washing over me once again. It's just different now. Jake's expression shifted, concern flickering in his eyes. You look worried. What's going on? I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I just heard something, a laugh. Sounded like kids, but it felt strange, like it didn't belong here. His brow furrowed. We should check it out. I'm sure it's nothing, just the wind or something. I hesitated, the memory of my childhood adventures here flooding back. But the laughter still echoed in my ears, and the house felt less like a sanctuary and more like a crypt. Okay, let's do it, I said, forcing a smile. As night fell, the house took on a different character altogether. Shadows danced along the walls, and the creaks of the old wooden floors echoed like whispers of the past. I settled into my old bedroom, but sleep eluded me. Instead, I was haunted by unsettling dreams, visions of children playing in the yard, their laughter ringing sweetly, yet tinged with a hint of sorrow. I woke up suddenly, my heart pounding, the sound of laughter still echoing in my mind, now clearer and closer than before. Emily! I jolted upright at the sound of Jake's voice, his silhouette framed in the doorway. You okay? I heard you mumbling. I shook my head, trying to shake off the remnants of my dream. I keep hearing those kids. Their laughter. It feels so real, Jake. He stepped into the room, concern etched across his features. Maybe it's just the memories. This place has a lot of history. But as I sat there, the weight of the house pressed heavily on my chest. I needed to understand what was happening. We had to dig deeper. The next day, we made our way to the local library, the scent of old books filling the air as we searched through the archives. It wasn't long before we stumbled upon the tragic history of the house. A string of disappearances, all linked to this very place. My stomach knotted as I read the names of the children, their lives extinguished too soon. "Look at this," Jake said, pulling a dusty book from the shelf. "It's about the families that lived here. There are mentions of a cult and the disappearances." My heart raced. "Do you think it's connected to the laughter?" Jake nodded, flipping through the pages. "There's a diary here. It belonged to a girl named Sarah. Maybe she has answers." As we read through her entries, I felt a strange connection to her words. She described the carefree days spent playing in the yard, but there was also a shadow lurking, an unseen figure watching from the trees. My breath hitched as I recalled the laughter I had heard. Was it possible that Sarah was still here, trying to reach out? "Emily, are you okay?" Jake asked, noticing my distant gaze. "I don't know. It's just, I feel like I can relate to her, like I'm somehow tied to this place." Jake placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We'll figure this out together. We have to." But as the days passed, it became clear that the town was wary of our investigation. Resistance met us at every turn. Old Mr. Thompson, his voice grave and eyes narrowed, warned us to stay away from the house. "You don't want to meddle with the past, kids. There's things in that house better left forgotten." "Like what?" I pressed, unable to hold back my curiosity. He hesitated, glancing around as if the shadows themselves could hear. "A cult. They used to gather there. Rituals, dark things." Jake's expression hardened. "My brother disappeared around the same time. I need to know what happened." Mr. Thompson shook his head, a look of pity crossing his face. "Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Just leave it be." But Jake was resolute. "We can't. Not when there are answers out there." I felt torn. Part of me wanted to heed the warning, to turn back and forget this place. But another part of me, a part that was inexplicably drawn to the mystery, knew we couldn't walk away. That evening, I sought out my grandmother, hoping to find some clarity. She was sitting in her worn armchair, knitting quietly, her eyes distant. "Grandma," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "can we talk about the house?" Her expression shifted, worry etching lines on her face. "Why would you want to do that, Emily? It's better to leave the past where it belongs." "But I need to know. There are things happening, strange things." She sighed, putting down her knitting. "Your family has always known the tragedies tied to that house, but we never spoke of them. We were afraid of what we might summon." "Summon?" I echoed, the weight of her words sinking in. "What do you mean?" "It belonged to an ancestor of yours, a woman who was part of that cult. The children, their fate is tied to a pact made long ago. You must understand, Emily, some truths are better left buried." I felt a rush of betrayal. "You knew all along? Why didn't you tell me?" "It was for your own protection. The past is a dangerous thing." Standing there, I felt the world around me shift. The laughter, the dreams, the house. It was all connected, and I had to confront it. I looked at my grandmother, searching for answers, but all I found was fear reflected in her eyes. "Grandma, I can't just walk away from this. I need to face the truth." As I left her house, I could feel the weight of her disapproval shadowing me, yet I knew there was no turning back. Jake was waiting for me, his determination igniting a fire within me. "We can't stop now," I said, my voice steady. "We need to uncover the truth, no matter how painful." And as we stood on the threshold of the past, I felt an echo of the laughter that had haunted me. It was time to face the darkness, to understand what had been hidden for far too long. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the overgrown lawn of my childhood home, a sense of determination settled in my chest. Jake and I had spent the last few days poring over dusty diaries and whispered conversations, unraveling secrets that the town had buried deep. Tonight, we would confront those secrets head-on. The idea of hosting a vigil in the house felt both absurd and necessary. A way to honor the lost children and perhaps, just perhaps, to find a way to break the cycle of fear that had enveloped our lives since I returned. "Are you sure about this, Em?" Jake asked, leaning against the rusty gate, his brown hair catching the fading light. His eyes, usually so full of mischief, were clouded with worry. What if we stir something up? What if the stories are true? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his gaze. "We need to do this, Jake. We've uncovered too much for us to just walk away now. If we don't give those kids a voice, who will?" I turned to face the house, its silhouette looming ominously against the twilight sky. "Yeah, but what if it's something we can't handle? I don't want anyone getting hurt." His voice was low, almost a whisper, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. "I don't either," I replied, trying to inject confidence into my own voice. "But we owe it to them, to Sarah, to all the others. They deserve to be heard, and maybe we'll finally learn what happened to them. We can't let fear control us." He nodded slowly, still unconvinced, but I could see the flicker of resolve in his eyes. I felt a surge of gratitude for him. Jake had always been my anchor, the one who could bring me back when I drifted too far into dark thoughts. As we made our way to the house, I could hear the rustling of leaves, a reminder that we were not alone. Inside, the air was thick with memories. Dust motes danced in the beams of light filtering through the broken windows. I set up candles on the old dining table, their flickering flames casting eerie shadows around the room. Jake watched me, his brow furrowed. "Do you think anyone will actually come?" he asked, glancing at the door as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. "I hope so," I said, my voice steadying. "I invited a few friends and some of the locals who aren't afraid to talk about the past. They need to know they're not alone in this." As the minutes ticked by, the house seemed to come alive with anticipation. Each creak of the floorboards echoed in the silence, and I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. Just when I thought we might be alone, the door creaked open, and a group of familiar faces stepped inside. "Hey, Emily!" "Hey, Jake!" shouted Mia, one of my closest friends since childhood. She swept into the room with a bright smile, her dark curls bouncing. "This place is even creepier than I remembered. Are we really doing this?" "Yeah, we are," I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm. "Thanks for coming." "Of course. I'm here for you," she said, glancing around the room. "What do you need us to do?" "Just help me set up. We'll start with some introductions and share what we know about the house and the kids who disappeared." As more friends trickled in, the atmosphere shifted from tense to hopeful. Laughter mingled with nervous chatter, and I felt a sense of camaraderie building among us. But as the sun disappeared completely, plunging the house into darkness, I felt the weight of what we were about to do settle heavily on my shoulders. The candles flickered as I gathered everyone around the table. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "Tonight, we're here to honor the children who disappeared from this house and to seek answers. We've uncovered some disturbing truths about the past, and I believe we need to confront them together." Murmurs of agreement and unease rippled through the group. I could see Jake shifting beside me, his fists clenched. I knew he was grappling with his own fears, about his brother, about what we might unleash. "We've heard the laughter," I continued, "and we've seen the shadows, but we also know that these children deserve to be remembered. They deserve justice. So, I'm asking you all to join me in a moment of silence to honor them before we begin." As we bowed our heads, the air in the room changed. It felt charged, electric, as if the very walls were holding their breath. I could almost hear the whispers of the children, echoing in the silence. After a minute, I lifted my head, and Jake glanced at me, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. "What's next?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to create a space for them to come forward," I said, feeling a surge of courage. "I'm going to call out to them and invite them to join us. If they want to share their stories, we need to be ready to listen." I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, centering myself. "Spirits of the children who played here, we invite you to join us in this space. We wish to hear your stories and understand your pain. Please, if you can hear us, show us a sign." As I opened my eyes, the room felt different. A chill passed through the air, and I could see the flickering of the candle flames, dancing wildly. I exchanged a glance with Jake, who looked more anxious than ever. "Did you feel that?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my tone calm. "It feels like they're here with us." Mia, sensing the shift, leaned closer. "What do we do if they respond?" "Just stay calm," I said, my heart racing. "We just need to be open to whatever happens." Just then, the door creaked open wider, and the wind swept through the room, extinguishing a few candles. Gasps filled the air, and I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. "Emily?" Jake's voice trembled, and I could see the fear etched across his face. "It's okay," I reassured him, though my own heart raced. "It's just the wind." But as the wind died down, I felt an overwhelming presence in the room. The air thickened, and I could hear soft giggles echoing around us, growing louder and more distinct. My heartbeat quickened as I realized that the laughter was not just in my head. It was real. "Did you hear that?" Mia asked, her eyes wide with shock. "Yes," I breathed. "They're here." The laughter transformed into whispers, calling out our names. My skin prickled, and I could feel the energy shifting, almost swirling around us. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Emily!" a voice called, echoing from the shadows. "Help us! Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you want?" The whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices overlapping, and I could see Jake's face pale. He was gripped with fear, his hands shaking. "Emily, we need to stop this," he urged, taking a step back. "This isn't right." "No," I insisted, my voice rising above the chaos. "They need us. We can't turn away from them now." Suddenly, the candles flared back to life, illuminating the room, and I caught a glimpse of a small figure darting between the shadows. My heart raced. "Did you see that?" I gasped, pointing toward the flickering light. "What? Where?" Jake asked, his eyes darting around the room. "That way," I exclaimed, moving toward the source. "I think it's one of them. I need to see." As I stepped forward, the shadows seemed to pull away, revealing a dimly lit path toward the back of the house. I could feel Jake's hesitation behind me, but I pressed on, driven by an urge to connect with the child who reached out. "Come back," I called softly. "It's okay. We just want to help." The laughter echoed again, but this time it was accompanied by a soft cry. My heart ached with empathy. "Please don't be afraid. We're here for you." Jake caught up with me, his breath coming in quick gasps. "Emily, this is insane. We should really think about stopping." But I could see the conflict in his eyes, the same yearning to uncover the truth that I felt. "Just a little longer," I urged, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're so close." As I turned the corner, the figure vanished, leaving only the faint sound of giggles behind. But the energy in the room pulsed with intensity, and I could feel the spirits swirling around us, their presence growing stronger. "Let's try to reach out again," I suggested, heart pounding. "Maybe they'll show themselves if we call for them together." Jake nodded hesitantly, and we gathered our friends closer, forming a circle. "On 3, we call out together," I instructed. "We'll say their names and let them know we're here." "Okay," Jake agreed, though his voice was still shaky. "But we need to be careful." "Agreed." 1, 2, 3, I shouted, and we all called out. The night air was thick with tension as we gathered at the decaying house. The wind howled mournfully, rustling the leaves on the overgrown trees that surrounded the property. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I stood beside Jake, watching our friends trickle in, some with hesitant smiles, others with outright fear etched on their faces. They had come to stand with us, but I knew deep down that no one could truly understand what we were about to confront. "Are you sure about this, Em?" Jake whispered, his voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. I turned to him, the flickering lantern light casting shadows across his worried features. "I have to know the truth, Jake. We have to know what happened to the kids. We can't just ignore it," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The last thing I wanted was to show any weakness, especially now. It was time to face whatever haunts this place. As we made our way inside, the air grew colder, and the familiar whispers of laughter echoed through the halls. It was as if the house itself was alive, urging us to dig deeper. The old wooden floorboards creaked ominously under our feet, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I glanced at Jake, who was scanning the dimly lit room, his jaw set in determination. "Let's gather everyone in the living room," he suggested, and I nodded, grateful for his leadership. We needed to rally our friends before the night took a darker turn. Once everyone was settled, I stood before them, my heart racing. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to remember the children who disappeared and to hopefully find a way to set their spirits free. We can't let fear hold us back any longer," I said, trying to project strength, though I could feel my voice tremble slightly. Jake stepped forward, his presence a calming influence. "We've been hearing strange things since we got here. Laughter, whispers, all kinds of weird stuff. We believe it's connected to what happened in this house. And tonight, we want to honor those lost and find a way to help them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, but I could see the apprehension in their eyes. I glanced around the circle, meeting the gaze of each friend, their expressions a mix of worry and curiosity. "Are you sure it's safe?" One of them, Tara, asked, her voice shaking. "What if we disturb something we shouldn't? Nothing can be worse than what's already happened," I replied, my own voice steadying. "We need to face it together." As we began to light candles, illuminating the room with a soft, flickering glow, I felt a strange energy building. The atmosphere shifted, and a chill ran down my spine. I could hear faint laughter again, rising and falling like a haunting melody. I looked around, but nobody else seemed to notice. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake nodded, his expression serious. "Yeah, it sounds like it's coming from outside," he said, stepping toward the window. I followed him, peering out into the darkness. Shadows danced in the moonlight, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw figures darting between the trees, giggling like children at play. My heart raced, but I shook my head, trying to dismiss it as a trick of the light. "Let's stay focused, okay?" Jake said, turning back to the group. "We're here for a reason." As we gathered in a circle, I felt a surge of energy coursing through me. It was as if the house was responding to our presence. The air thickened, and the room grew colder. I looked at Jake, who seemed equally affected, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Let's take a moment to remember the children," I suggested, closing my eyes. "We can each say their names, share our memories, and then we can try to reach out to them." One by one, we began to share stories, names, and memories of the lost children. I spoke of Sarah, the girl from the diary, and how I felt a connection to her. As I recounted her laughter, I could almost hear it echoing in the room, mingling with the whispers that surrounded us. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the room plunged momentarily into darkness. Gasps filled the air as everyone scrambled to hold onto something, their faces pale with shock. "Stay calm," Jake shouted, trying to maintain order. "It's just the power. We can't let it scare us." But fear had taken root, and I could see it in the wide eyes of my friends. Just then, a loud bang echoed from the back of the house, followed by a chorus of frightened whispers. "Did you hear that?" Tara cried, her voice trembling. "What was that?" "Let's check it out," I said, my heart racing. I felt a pull toward the sound, an inexplicable urge to discover what lay beyond the darkness. Jake hesitated, but I could see the determination in his eyes as he nodded. Okay, but we stick together, he insisted. No one goes off alone. As we ventured deeper into the house, the shadows grew more oppressive. I could feel the energy shifting, the air crackling with tension. We reached the hallway leading to the old basement door, its wood warped and weathered by years of neglect. Do you think we should go down there? One of our friends asked, glancing nervously at the ominous staircase. If there's anything down there, it's part of the story, Jake replied, his voice steady. We need to confront it. With hesitant steps, we descended the creaking stairs. The darkness enveloped us, and the smell of damp earth filled the air. My heart raced as I realized how far we had come. Too far to turn back now. I could hear whispers again, louder this time, swirling around us like a sinister wind. Can you hear them? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake nodded, his eyes scanning the shadows. It sounds like laughter? Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the basement, causing the candles we had lit to flicker wildly. I felt something brush against my arm, and I gasped, stepping back. Emily, Jake called, reaching out to steady me. Are you okay? I think something's here. I stammered, my heart pounding. I can feel it. As we moved deeper into the basement, the room opened up, revealing what looked like an old playroom. Dusty toys lay scattered across the floor, their colors faded with time. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me as I recognized some of them. Things I had played with as a child. What happened down here? I whispered, kneeling to pick up a small doll, its glassy eyes staring blankly back at me. Maybe this was where they played, Jake said softly, his voice heavy with emotion. Before, everything changed. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us, a cacophony of voices calling out. I could almost make out the words, but they were drowned in the chaos. Panic rose within me, and I looked at Jake, desperation flooding my senses. Jake, we need to do something, I exclaimed. They're trying to tell us something. He nodded, determination etched on his face. Let's try to reach out to them. Maybe if we acknowledge them, they'll respond. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over us. We're here for you, I called out, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. We remember you. We want to help you. The temperature dropped suddenly, and I could see my breath misting in the air. The laughter transformed into a chorus of cries, echoing in the darkness. I could feel the presence growing stronger, pushing against us, begging for recognition. Please, let us help you, Jake shouted, his voice rising above the noise. We won't abandon you. As if in response, a shadow darted past me, and I turned quickly, my heart racing. Did you see that? I gasped, my pulse quickening. Yeah, Jake replied, eyes wide. It was a kid. Sarah, I called out, desperation creeping into my voice. Is that you? The room fell silent for a heartbeat, and then a soft giggle echoed from the far corner. I turned toward the sound, my heart racing. There, I pointed, my breath hitching in my throat. Did you hear that? Jake took a step forward, his expression a mix of wonder and fear. I think we're close, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We moved cautiously toward the source of the laughter, the shadows thickening around us. I could feel a pull, an invisible thread connecting me to whatever lay just beyond our reach. But as we approached, the atmosphere shifted again, darker, more foreboding. Then, in the flickering candlelight, I saw her. A small figure standing just beyond the edge of the darkness, her hair floating around her like a halo. It was a girl no older than 10, with a smile that seemed both inviting and sad. Help us, she called, her voice echoing like a distant bell. We're lost. Sarah, I gasped, my heart clenching. Is that you? She nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and despair. The air in the hidden basement was thick with dust and the unmistakable scent of decay. My heart raced as I held the flickering flashlight in my hand, illuminating the dark corners of the room. The walls were lined with old, peeling wallpaper, and the floor was littered with broken toys. Their once vibrant colors now faded and dulled by time. Jake stood beside me, his face a mix of fear and determination, and I could see the shadows dancing across his features as the light flickered. "Emily, are you sure we should be down here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if something happens?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "We have to know the truth, Jake. We can't keep running from it." My words felt heavy, weighed down by the realization that we were delving into something far more sinister than either of us had anticipated. As I scanned the room, my eyes landed on a dusty trunk in the corner. It looked old, possibly from the time when the house was still filled with laughter and life. "Let's check that out," I said, pointing toward the trunk. "It might contain something important." Jake hesitated but nodded. "All right, but let's be careful." He walked over, kneeling beside the trunk and inspecting the rusty lock. "It looks like it hasn't been opened in years." I knelt beside him, brushing away the dust with my fingers. "Maybe there's a key somewhere around here," I suggested, scanning the area for anything that might help. As I rummaged through the debris, I felt a chill crawl up my spine, the sensation of being watched prickling at the back of my neck. "Do you feel that?" I asked Jake, my voice trembling slightly. "Feel what?" he replied, his brow furrowed in concentration as he tried to pry the trunk open. "I just feel uneasy, like we're not alone." Before I could respond, Jake managed to force the lock open with a loud snap. The trunk creaked as he lifted the lid, revealing old clothes, a few tattered toys, and a stack of yellowed papers. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized one of the toys, a small, stuffed rabbit with one eye missing. It was just like the one I had when I was a child, a toy I had lost in the woods behind the house. "Emily, look at this," Jake said, pulling out the stack of papers. He began to sift through them, and I leaned closer, my curiosity piqued as he unfolded the top page. "It's a diary." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as he continued to read. "It belonged to one of the kids who disappeared," he said, his voice low and shaky. "It mentions the games they played and this figure that watched them." "Let me see," I urged, reaching out for the diary. As I took it from him, my fingers brushed against his, and a jolt of electricity coursed through me, making me shiver. The diary was filled with jagged handwriting, the ink smudged in places as if the writer had been in a hurry. I began to read aloud, my voice echoing in the damp air. "We play in the yard, but I always feel someone watching. Sometimes I see a shadow in the trees." I paused, glancing at Jake, who was watching me intently. "This is just like what we found in Sarah's diary. It's all connected." Jake leaned closer, his eyes widening as he processed the words. "What else does it say?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I continued reading, my heart racing. "Yesterday, I saw the shadow again. It moved closer, and I heard it whispering my name. I'm scared." I could feel the weight of her fear through the pages, the desperation of a child trapped in a nightmare. It says here that they played a game called hide and seek, but it felt different. It felt like a trap. "Emily, this isn't just a game. It sounds like they were being lured in," Jake said, his voice trembling. "What if the figure was part of whatever happened to them?" As I flipped through the pages, I stumbled upon a drawing, an innocent crayon sketch of several children playing in the yard, but one figure stood apart, shrouded in darkness. My stomach churned as I traced the outline with my finger. "This is it, Jake. This is the figure that Sarah talked about." Jake's face paled as he leaned closer to examine the drawing. "It looks like it's watching them. What if it was?" Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the basement, making us both jump. The flashlight flickered violently, casting erratic shadows across the walls. "What was that?" I gasped, my heart racing. "I don't know, but we should—" Jake started, but I cut him off. "No, we can't leave now. We're so close. We have to find out what happened." I felt a surge of determination, a fierce need to uncover the truth. The The fear that gripped me was quickly overshadowed by a sense of purpose. "Okay, but let's be careful," he replied, glancing nervously around the basement. We returned our attention to the diary, and I continued reading, my voice steady despite the rising tension. Today, I saw the figure again. Smiled at me, but it wasn't a nice smile. Felt wrong. The other kids don't see it, but I think it wants to take me away. I felt a lump form in my throat, the weight of her words pressing down on me. What if this is what happened to them? What if they were never really gone? Jake's eyes were wide with fear. But how? How could they still be here? I shook my head, overwhelmed by the implications. It says something about a ritual, something that keeps them here. My voice trembled as I read the final entry. "I'm scared. I don't know how to escape. If you find this, please help me." The diary slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor, a deafening silence enveloping us. "This is worse than I thought," I whispered, the reality of our situation settling over us like a heavy fog. "Emily, we have to get out of here," Jake urged, his voice filled with urgency. "This isn't just about the kids anymore. It's about us, too." I looked at him, feeling the weight of his words. "I can't, Jake. We can't leave without knowing what happened. This is our chance to understand what happened to you, brother, and the other kids. We have to face this." Just then, a cold breeze swept through the basement, causing the papers to flutter wildly. I shivered, and Jake instinctively stepped closer to me, his eyes darting around the room. "This place, it feels alive," he said, his voice trembling. "I know," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "But we're not alone here. The children, their spirits are trapped because of what happened in this house. We have to find a way to help them." Jake's expression hardened with resolve. "All right, then let's find out more. If there are rituals, we need to know what they are. We need to break whatever hold this place has on them." As we began to search the basement, I spotted something glinting in the corner. I made my way over, brushing aside the debris to reveal an old, ornate box. "Jake, look at this," I exclaimed, my voice filled with excitement. "What is it?" he asked, moving closer. I opened the box carefully, revealing a collection of old trinkets and objects, each one more peculiar than the last. There were small charms, a few candles, and a strange, ancient-looking book bound in cracked leather. "This must be it, the Book of Rituals," I said, my hands trembling as I picked it up. Jake's eyes widened, and he leaned in to examine it. "Do you think it has the answers we need?" "I hope so," I replied, flipping through the yellowed pages filled with intricate illustrations and cryptic writings. "But we have to be careful. This could be dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Jake asked, his brow furrowing. I paused, my heart sinking as I read one passage. It talks about sacrifices. It says that to maintain control over the spirits, the cult had to perform rituals involving the children. It's all connected to the figure we've seen. Jake turned pale. "Emily, what if they tried to do the same to us? What if we're not just here to help?" The weight of his words hung in the air, and I felt a chill run down my spine. We have to stay strong. We can't let fear control us. We have to break this cycle. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even further, and I could see my breath in the air. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to grow longer, and I felt a presence looming behind us. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Jake nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to go. Now." "No, Jake. We can't leave empty-handed. We need to know what we're up against," I shouted, my voice rising in desperation. "Emily, please," he pleaded, grabbing my arm and trying to pull me away. "I don't want to become part of this." I shook my head, pulling free from his grip. "We can't run from this anymore. We have to face it together." As I turned, the rain poured down in sheets, hammering against the windows of the old house like 1,000 tiny fists. The air was thick with tension and the scent of wet earth, and I could feel my heart racing as I turned to Jake, who was staring at me with wide, frightened eyes. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside my mind. We had come so far, piecing together the dark history of this place, and now we were on the cusp of confronting the true horror that lay within. "Are you sure about this, Emily?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if we unleash something we can't control?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. "We have to do this, Jake. If we can free the spirits, we might finally put an end to this nightmare. We owe it to the kids. And to you." He nodded slowly, but the worry etched on his face told me he wasn't fully convinced. I reached out and squeezed his hand. "You're not alone in this. We'll face whatever comes together." With a determined nod, Jake followed me to the living room, where we had set up a makeshift altar with candles, herbs, and the items we'd gathered during our investigations. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the howling wind outside seemed to echo the voices of the lost children. We had decided on a ritual to call forth the spirits, to give them a voice and a chance to break free from the shackles of the past. As I arranged the items, I could feel the weight of the house pressing down on me, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. "Emily," Jake called out, his voice trembling, What if the spirits want something from us? What if they're angry?" I turned to him, my heart aching at the fear in his eyes. "If they're angry, it's because they've been trapped for too long. We need to show them compassion. We need to let them know they're not forgotten." The storm raged outside, and I could hear the thunder rumbling in the distance, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. I lit the candles, one by one, and as the flames flickered to life, I felt a shift in the air. The atmosphere grew charged, electric, and I shivered as a chill ran down my spine. "Are you ready?" I asked, glancing over at Jake, who was still struggling to mask his fear. "Yeah," he replied, though his voice wavered. "Let's do it." We took our places at the altar, holding hands, and I closed my eyes, focusing on the energy around us. I had spent hours researching the incantations, the words that could bridge the gap between our world and the realm of the lost. "Spirits of the past," I began, my voice steady despite the tremors in my hands. "We call upon you, not to harm you but to offer you peace. We acknowledge your pain, your suffering, and we wish to help you find rest." As I spoke, I felt a sudden gust of wind rush through the room, extinguishing a few of the candles. The remaining flames flickered violently, and I felt Jake's grip tighten around my hand. "Emily," he gasped, panic rising in his voice. "What's happening?" "Stay focused," I urged, trying to keep my own fear at bay. "We need to keep going. Children of this house, we hear your laughter, your cries, and we honor your memory." I continued, my voice gaining strength. "We invite you to join us, to share your stories, to let us help you find the peace you deserve." The air grew colder, and I could see my breath misting in front of me. The candles flickered wildly, and I felt a presence beginning to fill the room. Shadows danced along the walls, and I could hear faint whispers, like echoes of laughter carried on the wind. "Emily, I can feel them," Jake whispered, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. "They're here." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "It's working. Just stay with me." Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a form, a figure rising from the darkness. I squinted through the flickering candlelight, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a child, no older than 8, with hollow eyes and a faint, ethereal glow. "Help us!" The child's voice barely reached my ears, trembling and filled with sorrow. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What do you need? Lost?" The child whispered, tears streaming down a face that seemed to flicker like a dying flame. "We're lost." Jake gasped beside me, and I felt his grip slacken. "Emily, this is real. They need us. Let us help you," I urged, my heart aching for the pain I could sense radiating from the child. "We want to help you find your way home." The child's form flickered again, and I could feel the weight of despair pressing down on me. "The dark, it holds us. We can't leave." "What dark?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The child pointed toward the shadows in the corner of the room, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. It calls to us, keeps us here. "Emily, we need to get out of here," Jake said, his voice rising in panic. "This is bad. This is really bad." "No!" I shouted, my heart racing. "We can't just leave them. They need us to fight back. We need to confront whatever is holding them here." The child's voice grew fainter, and I could sense the urgency in its presence. "Help, please. Tell us what to do," I pleaded, desperation clawing at my throat. "We'll do anything to free you." "Sacrifice?" the child whispered, and I felt the air grow heavier with the weight of that word. "Sacrifice," Jake echoed, fear etched across his face. "What do you mean?" The child's form flickered again, and I could feel the shadows closing in around us, thickening like a fog. "To break the bond, you must face the darkness." In that moment, the room erupted in chaos. The wind howled through the house, rattling the windows and shaking the very foundation beneath us. The candles flickered violently, and I felt an unseen force push against me, knocking me back into Jake. "Emily, we have to go," he shouted, trying to pull me toward the door. "No," I cried, struggling against his grip. "We can't leave them." Before I could say anything more, the shadows surged forward, enveloping us in darkness. I could hear whispers all around, rising to a deafening crescendo. "Help us! Help us! Emily!" Jake's voice broke through the chaos, filled with fear. "What do we do?" In the depths of my mind, a flicker of clarity emerged. I remembered the ancient texts I had read, the stories of those who had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. "We have to confront it," I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos. "We can't let it win." "Are you crazy?" Jake yelled back, panic flaring in his eyes. "That thing is powerful. We're stronger together," I insisted, determination flooding through me. "We can't let fear control us." As the shadows pressed closer, I felt a surge of courage wash over me. I turned to the child, whose face was now twisted in anguish. "We will fight for you. We will break the darkness together." "Sacrifice?" the child echoed, its voice barely a whisper. "You must choose." Jake's eyes darted around, his face pale with fear. "Emily, what if it means you or me? What if it's one of us that has to—" "No," I interrupted, shaking my head fiercely. "We will find another way. We will not let it take anyone." The whispers escalated into a cacophony of anguished cries, and I could feel the shadows clawing at my mind. I closed my eyes, focusing on the light within me, the hope I had for these lost souls. "Spirits of the past, we call upon your strength. We will not let the darkness consume us." Suddenly, the winds howled louder, and the shadows recoiled as if stung. I could feel a warmth spreading through the room, and I opened my eyes just in time to see the child's form begin to shimmer. It looked at us with a mixture of relief and sorrow, and I felt my heart clench. "Remember us?" it whispered, before dissolving into a shower of light that burst forth from the candles, illuminating the room. "Emily!" Jake shouted, pulling me close as the light surged, pushing back the shadows. "It's working. Keep going." With newfound determination, I raised my voice, calling upon the spirits of the other children. "We stand with you. We will not let fear dictate our fate." As I spoke, the light grew brighter, and the shadows began to retreat, wailing in fury. I could feel the energy around us shifting, and I knew we were on the brink of breaking the cycle of darkness that had held them captive for so long. "Together," I cried, squeezing Jake's hand. "We can do this." The room shook, and the shadows shrieked, their forms twisting, and the storm raged outside, the wind howling like a banshee as thunder rolled ominously in the distance. I stood in the old, decrepit basement of my childhood home, the air thick with tension and the scent of damp earth. My heart pounded in my chest as I grasped the edges of the diary, its pages yellowed and fragile beneath my fingers. It was Jake's face that haunted me at that moment, twisted in shock and despair as he read the truth about his brother's fate. "Emily," he gasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "It can't be true. It can't. Jake, I don't know what to say." I stammered, my mind racing. The words from the diary echoed ominously in my thoughts, detailing how the children had been trapped in a cycle of rituals, bound to the house, bound to the cult. And now, Jake's brother was somehow part of that dark legacy. "No!" he shouted, throwing the diary across the room, where it landed in a heap of dust and forgotten memories. "It can't end this way. I have to find him. I have to save him." I felt a swell of panic rise within me. "Jake, listen. We need to think this through. If we don't break the cycle, if we don't do something now, we might lose him forever." He turned to me, his eyes wild with desperation. "You don't understand. He's my brother. I can't just let him go." My heart broke for him. I wanted to comfort him, to pull him into my arms and tell him it would be okay. But the truth was more complicated than that. But if he's trapped in this cycle, if he's part of whatever is haunting this house, we have to confront it. We have to confront your brother. A flicker of doubt crossed Jake's face, and I could see his internal struggle. What if he's not the same? What if he's become one of them? The thought sent chills down my spine. I had seen the horrors of this place firsthand. The laughter of children that echoed through the halls, the shadows that danced just out of reach, the sense of something lurking behind every corner. We have to try, Jake. It's our only chance. He took a deep breath, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. Okay, let's do this. But if things go south, we need to be ready to run. I nodded, my own fear bubbling beneath the surface. Let's prepare the ritual. We'll free the spirits, both Jake's brother and the others. The thunder roared again, shaking the very foundations of the house. The storm felt like a physical manifestation of our emotions, a tempest of fear and uncertainty. We gathered the items we needed: candles, salt, and the diary that held the key to the incantation. Each object felt heavy with the weight of history, the lives that had been lost, and the darkness that had consumed this place. As we began to arrange the candles in a circle, I could feel a strange energy building in the air, as if the very walls of the house were alive with anticipation. "Do you feel that?" I asked, glancing at Jake. He nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Yeah, it's like the house is watching us." "Maybe it is," I murmured, my heart racing. "But we can't let it intimidate us. We have to take control." We lit the candles, their flames flickering and casting eerie shadows across the room. The air grew thick with the scent of burning wax, and I felt an electric charge in the atmosphere, a promise of something both terrifying and powerful. "Are you ready?" I asked Jake, my voice trembling slightly. He took a deep breath, nodding resolutely. "Ready as I'll ever be." I opened the diary, scanning the pages for the incantation we needed. "Here it is," I said, my voice steady. "We call upon the spirits trapped in this house. We ask for their release, and we demand the truth to be revealed." As I began to recite the words, I felt the temperature drop, the air becoming heavy and oppressive. "Spirits of the lost and forgotten," I intoned, my voice echoing in the stillness. "We call upon you to reveal yourself, to break the chains that bind you to this world." Suddenly, the candles flickered wildly, and the walls seemed to pulse with energy. "Emily!" Jake shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Something's happening." I could feel it too. The shadows around us began to shift and swirl as if alive. "Keep going," I urged, my heart racing. "We need to finish the incantation. Spirits of the lost and forgotten, we offer you peace. We offer you freedom." A chilling wind swept through the basement, extinguishing the candles, plunging us into darkness. I could hear whispers, indistinct and haunting, swirling around us. "Emily, what's happening?" Jake cried, his voice trembling. "Just hold on," I shouted over the cacophony. "We can't stop now." As I continued, I felt something brush against my shoulder, a cold, clammy presence. I gasped, my skin crawling. "Jake, I think they're here. I can't see anything, he shouted, panic rising in his voice. What do we do? Just trust me, I yelled, my voice fierce. We will free them. Together. The whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of voices, each one pleading, each one filled with sorrow. Help us! Free us! They cried, echoing through the chamber. Please, we need to know. I shouted, trying to drown out the noise. Show us the truth. Suddenly, in the darkness, a figure emerged. A child, pale and ethereal, with wide eyes that seemed to pierce through the shadows. Help us? The child whimpered, reaching out a hand towards us. Is that? Jake's voice faltered, recognition dawning in his expression. Sarah. I breathed, my heart racing. It's Sarah. The child nodded, her gaze filled with desperation. You have to stop him. He's coming back. Who? I asked, my mind racing. The one who trapped us here, she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. He's coming for you. In that moment, I understood. Jake, it's your brother. He's part of this. No, Jake shouted, stepping back. He can't be, no. But the child's eyes were filled with sorrow. You must confront him or he'll never be free. Sarah, how? I pleaded, desperation seeping into my voice. Perform the ritual. Break the cycle, she urged, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. But you must be willing to let go. What do you mean? Jake asked, confusion etched on his face. Let go of the past. Let go of your brother, she whispered, her voice fading. Only then can he be saved. No, Jake cried, anguish lacing his words. I can't. I won't. Tears streamed down my face. Jake, please, we have to do this. If we don't, we're all trapped here forever. A deafening roar of wind filled the basement, shaking the walls and rattling the remnants of the past. I felt the energy surge around us, the shadows closing in. We can't wait any longer. I grasped Jake's hand tightly, forcing him to look at me. We can do this. Together. With resolve, I resumed the incantation, my voice stronger now. We demand the truth. We demand freedom for all souls bound by this darkness. The wind howled, and suddenly, a figure materialized before us. Jake's brother, older and more haggard than I had imagined, but unmistakably him. Jake, he rasped, his voice a ghostly echo. No, Jake shouted, stepping forward. You have to come back with me. We'll fix this. His brother shook his head, sadness etched on his face. It's too late for me. I'm part of this now. No, Jake cried again, anguish tearing at his heart. You can't be. I won't let you be. Jake, I said, my voice trembling. You need to listen to him. This is part of the cycle. His brother stepped closer, his eyes filled with an ancient sorrow. You have to let go, brother. You have to set me free. You need to break the cycle. But I can't lose you again, Jake shouted, tears streaming down his cheeks. Let me go, Jake, his brother pleaded. If you love me, you'll let me go. The weight of the moment pressed down on us, the air charged with raw emotion. I could see the struggle in Jake's eyes, the torment of losing someone he loved so deeply. But I don't know how, he cried, despair clutching at his heart. Let go of the past, I urged, stepping closer to him. You can't hold on to the pain if you want to move forward. We can break this cycle together. Jake's eyes,